On August 5th, 2026, the Congressional Budget Office put a price on the most controversial warship in America, $23.4 billion for one hull. That is more than the Navy paid for the USS Gerald R. Ford, the most expensive aircraft carrier in history. And buried inside that report sits a single sentence that turned a price tag into a war inside the Pentagon. For the money the Navy plans to spend on one new battleship, it could buy 5 brand new destroyers instead. 5 hulls, 5 crews, 5 ships covering 5 different oceans, or one steel giant carrying more weapons than any surface warship ever built. The Navy has already made its choice. The question is whether the math actually works, because when you run the numbers, both sides of this fight are right, and that is exactly what makes it dangerous. Start with the ship itself. On December 22, 2025, the administration announced that the Navy would build a new class of large surface combatants, the Trump Class Guided Missile Battleship, designation BBGX. The ship itself is unlike anything the Navy has attempted since World War II. Picture a hull nearly the length of the old Iowa-class battleships, a scale American shipyards have not touched since the 1940s. More than 3.5 times the size of an Arleigh Burke destroyer, more than twice the size of a Zumwalt, the largest surface combatant built for the Navy in 80 years. And the weapons are where it stops resembling anything in the current fleet. This one hull would carry more missiles than any surface warship afloat, alongside hypersonic weapons, an electromagnetic railgun, high-powered lasers, and, for the first time in more than 30 years, nuclear-armed cruise missiles on the deck of an American surface ship. The first ship will be named Defiant, and the Navy wants to order it in 2028. The Navy told Congress the lead ship would cost $15.1 billion. The Congressional Budget Office looked at the same program and came back with $23.4 billion, 55% higher. Follow-on ships would average $18 billion each, 15 ships by 2056. Total program, $275 billion. To put that in perspective, the Columbia-class submarines that will carry most of America's nuclear deterrent cost about $10 billion each. Future Ford-class carriers, about $22 billion. If the CBO is right, the Navy is about to build 15 ships that each cost as much as an aircraft carrier without carrying a single aircraft. Part of the gap between $15 billion and $23 billion comes down to one decision the Navy reversed in public. In January 2026, the Chief of Naval Operations said the battleship would not be nuclear-powered. Building a nuclear surface combatant would take too long and cost too much. 4 months later, the Navy's own shipbuilding plan made the ship nuclear. That single change added roughly 13% to the program, about $32 billion, and it rewired the entire industrial equation, because only one shipyard in America is certified to assemble nuclear-powered surface ships. But before the shipyards, the sentence that started the fight. A new Arleigh Burke destroyer costs more than $3 billion. At $18 billion per battleship, the CBO calculated the Navy could buy 5 destroyers for the price of 1. Now run the missile math. Those 5 destroyers combined carry more than 3 times as many missile cells as the single battleship. Dollar for dollar, the smaller ships simply put more firepower to sea. They also put them in 5 places at once. A destroyer can patrol the Red Sea while its sisters cover the Taiwan Strait, the Baltic, the Gulf, and the North Atlantic. A battleship, however powerful, can only be in one place. And in an era of hypersonic anti-ship missiles, 5 targets are harder to kill than 1. If you were the one signing that check, which fleet would you buy? Here is where the math flips. The CBO ran the same comparison across a 40-year service life, and the answer reversed. 5 destroyers need 5 crews, roughly 1,800 sailors, more than double what the one battleship needs. 5 hulls need 5 overhaul cycles, 5 sets of spare parts, 5 maintenance budgets. And 5 conventional ships burn fuel for 4 decades, while a nuclear battleship never refuels at all. Over the life of the ships, the CBO concluded, the 5 destroyers would cost far more to operate than the one battleship. The cheap option is expensive. The expensive option is cheap. It depends entirely on which decade you are standing in. So which decade do you budget for? The one where you buy the ship, or the 4 where you own it? That question is why both sides inside the Pentagon can quote the same report and both claim victory. There is also a casualty in this fight that most people missed. For years, the Navy was designing its next-generation destroyer, the DDG-X, an estimated $4.4 billion per ship, with 28 of them planned. The Battleship killed it. The Navy's explanation: the DDG-X design forced undesirable compromises in capability and weapons. So instead of building a bigger destroyer, it jumped straight to a ship more than twice that size. The 2027 shipbuilding plan now calls for 72 large surface combatants over 30 years, 15 battleships, and 57 more Arleigh Burkes, a design first authorized in 1985. The annual bill for surface combatants rises from about $11 billion to $19 billion. Even inside Congress's own research arms, the doubts are on the record. The Congressional Research Service's senior naval analyst suggested lawmakers should ask whether the battleship program came first and the analysis came later, a polite way of asking whether the Navy did the homework before it placed the order. If breakdowns of the numbers behind the Navy's biggest decisions are the kind of story you want more of, subscribing is the simplest way to make that happen, because this program has 30 years of fights ahead of it, and the next one is already visible from here. That next fight is not about money, it is about steel and people. For the past 40 years, every large surface combatant in the United States Navy has been built by 2 shipyards, Bath Iron Works in Maine and Ingalls Shipbuilding in Mississippi. Neither is certified for nuclear construction, so the battleship's final assembly moves to Newport News Shipbuilding in Virginia, into the same massive dry dock where America builds its aircraft carriers. Newport News is already behind schedule on 3 carriers and a line of submarines. Bath and Ingalls, meanwhile, are delivering destroyers an average of 5 years late. In the early 2000s, a Burke took 5 years from funding to delivery. Today, it takes 11. Into that system, the Navy wants to insert a brand new nuclear warship of unprecedented size and start construction in 2028 on a design that does not fully exist yet. By 2035, American shipyards would need to more than double their annual output of large surface combatants. Can an industry that needs 11 years to build a destroyer it has been building since the 1980s deliver the largest surface combatant in the world, on schedule, on the first try? History has an answer, and it is not comforting. America has been here before, twice. In June 1944, the Navy commissioned the USS Missouri, the last battleship it ever built. The following year, Japan signed its surrender on her deck, and by then the age of the battleship was already over, ended not by another battleship, but by aircraft carriers that could strike from 200 miles away. Then, in the 1980s, the Navy fell in love again. As part of the drive toward a 600-ship fleet, all 4 Iowa-class battleships came out of mothballs, rebuilt with Tomahawk and Harpoon missiles bolted onto their decks. The New Jersey hammered positions in Lebanon in 1984. The Missouri and Wisconsin launched Tomahawks and fired their 16-inch guns in Desert Storm. And by 1992, all 4 were gone again, giants with crews of more than 1,500 that the Navy simply could not afford to keep running. The second battleship era lasted barely a decade, and it did not end in battle. It ended in a budget meeting. Then came the Navy's most recent clean-sheet large surface combatant, the Zumwalt class. 32 ships planned, 3 built. Its main guns were never fired in service. Because the ammunition grew so expensive, the Navy simply canceled it. Every generation that falls in love with the battleship eventually meets the same enemy, not an opposing fleet, a budget. The CBO report makes no recommendation. It never does. It simply lays the numbers on the table. $23.4 billion for the first ship, $275 billion for the class, 5 destroyers for the price of 1 giant, and an industrial base already 5 years behind on the ships it knows how to build. Congress now has to choose between 2 versions of American sea power. A fleet of many, spread thin across every ocean, or a fleet of giants, concentrated, armored, and impossible to ignore. The first steel is scheduled to be cut in 2028. Whether Defiant becomes the flagship of a new American century or the most expensive lesson in naval history will come down to the same unforgiving arithmetic that has followed every battleship before it. Because in the end, the Navy is not really betting $23 billion on a ship. It is betting that this time the math is different.